Does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
I rise in opposition to the motion to recommit.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Ben, I'd like to remind members that traffic in the well while another member is addressing the House is improper behavior. Gentleman may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Second Amendment to our Constitution was drafted, debated, and ratified in precisely the same manner as the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth, the Sixth, and other amendments our colleagues on the other side of the aisle find so sacrosanct. And consistent with this belief that liberty and the right to arm oneself are inextricably linked, it is settled law that our Constitution protects the right to travel. It protects the right to self-defense. It protects the right to defend the lives of others. Not once, Madam Speaker, but twice, the Supreme Court has held the right to keep and bear arms is a fundamental individual right. And those rights do not know any geographic boundary.
Gentleman's correct. The House is not in order. Members, please take their conversations from the floor. Gentleman may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Not once but twice, the Supreme Court has held the right to keep and bear arms as a fundamental individual right, and those rights do not know any geographic boundary, and our right to defend ourselves does not ebb and flow with the vicissitudes of travel or because we transverse a state line. Despite the fact that these rights are protected in the Constitution, there are still those who seek to treat the Second Amendment as a constitutional second-class citizen. Sometimes those efforts, Madam Speaker, to denigrate the constitutional status of the Second Amendment are overt, and sometimes they are obscure. And as much as we appreciate the renewed, and I am sure short-lived, infatuation with states' rights embraced by some of our colleagues on the other side, let me ask you simply this: what limits are you willing to accept with regard to the First Amendment? Does your state want reporters to have to pass a test so they can exercise their First Amendment? Do you want 50 different versions of freedom of religion? What about the Fourth Amendment? Is one state free to dispose of the exclusionary rule because it doesn't agree with it? Do we have 50 different versions of what's a reasonable search and seizure? What about the Fifth Amendment? Do we have 50 different versions of Miranda? What about the Eighth Amendment? Are there 50 different versions of cruel and unusual punishment? We are delighted, Madam Speaker, to have our colleagues rediscover the beauty of the 10th Amendment and the concept of state rights. Eventually, we hope the same for the Second Amendment. This motion to recommit is offered to jettison the underlying bill and further relegate the Second Amendment to a constitutional scrap heap. All of these amendments were dealt with in committee, Madam Speaker, and the matters of state law classifications are just that, state law. The fact that certain state legislatures refuse to protect their citizens does not mean this body will refuse or abdicate its responsibility to defend the Second Amendment. This bill, Madam Speaker, H.R. 822, has 245 co-sponsors, more than half the members of this body, and it enjoys that wide and diverse support because it is emblematic of our forefathers' genius. They gave us the fundamental right to travel. They gave us the fundamental right to protect ourselves. They gave us the fundamental right to protect others. And they gave us the fundamental obligation to defend liberty. I urge my colleagues to oppose this motion, and I yield back the balance of my time.